Hey folks, welcome back to the show. We have a great episode for you today. As always, my guest is a man on a mission to provide women with cutting edge therapies to help them not just extend their health span and lifespan, but to do so by extending their fertility span. And even taps into something called Schadenfreude, which is a really interesting concept. So that's a pretty cool episode, very interesting approach to longevity that we haven't really explored much in the past. But of course, before we jump into that, I want to thank you guys for being here. And whether you're a new listener, old listener, if you've been with me for a long time, or you've just stumbled upon the show, thank you so much for being here. And if you enjoy the episode, please make sure that you leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to us on, because that is how we get to reach more people like you and spread the message around. And last ask from me is to please, if you haven't already done so, sign up for the newsletter. We've got lots of cool stuff in there and always sharing hacks that I'm really into any given week. And we don't send it out that often. It's certainly not a daily newsletter, but lots of great information. And these days, when you sign up for the newsletter, you actually get a 7-part series of how I coach my clients on establishing foundational health before they really can get into more of the more advanced strategies for longevity and health span. So that's pretty packed with information as well. Okay. Imagine being able to delay or even reverse menopause, potentially extending your lifespan by over 20 years or by up to 20 years while maintaining the vitality of someone decades younger. Is that not what really we're all after? Now, this is not science fiction. It's not some crazy movie. It's the groundbreaking work being done by Zack Varkaris and his team at Austin Biotech. And this is exactly what we talk about in this episode of Longevity. We dive into his innovative approach to women's longevity, which combines cutting-edge stem cell treatments with personalized lifestyle optimization. We even discuss how women can maintain peak physical and mental performance well into their later years, the foundational importance of, you guys know this, diet, exercise, as well as stress management, as well as the intricacies of stem cell therapy. Zack Varkaris is a biologist, author, founder, and scientific director of Austin Biotech, a company at the forefront of women's longevity research. Zack really has dedicated so much of his most recent career to focusing on fertility and aging issues, and his work at Austin Biotech centers on these innovative approaches to extending women's reproductive years and overall health. And like I said before, they're including stem cell treatments as well as personalized lifestyle optimization. And I think I was actually surprised. You will all be surprised at how critical that lifestyle part is to success. So I think you guys are going to love this one. Now, to find out more about Austin Biotech, you can go to the website, which is austinbiotech.com. And you can even, if you desire, schedule a consult. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, you can go to austinbiotech.com/consult-enquiry, ENQUIRY. And now let's jump into the episode. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Welcome to the show, Zack Varkaris. This is going to be epic. I can't wait for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Natalie.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. When did we meet? We met in Vegas at A4M.
Yeah.
Is it like a year and a half
No,
ago?
it's no,
right?
it's not. It's December.
Was it just this past?
Last December.
Was it just this past year?
Yeah, 6 months ago.
Wow. Okay.
It's gone quickly.
Yeah.
Funny, I was talking about A4M going this year, and my mother's arriving to visit the family. She's arriving a couple of days either side, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be going to A4M, so I'll have to leave you for a couple of days. And she's like, okay, darling.
You just set her up with a bunch of spa things. She'll be
spa
fine.
things and the grandkids. She's fine. It's all good.
Right? Yeah. That's all she needs.
Exactly.
Not true.
Yeah.
She may not agree, but maybe you'll have to bring her to A4M with you or something. Anyway, we are gathered here today to talk about a really cool topic. And I think it's it's taken us a while to get in front of the mic together.
Yeah.
And I think it's all because it was meant to be exactly like
Mhm.
this. So I remember when we met, and everybody's going to get this in the next 30 seconds when I let you rip. You are so freaking passionate about what you do. And it is always amazing to meet people who are doing groundbreaking work and whose passion just spills out of every cell of their body. And you're engaged in this world of longevity, and specifically for women. And in a world where so many people are so upset about, oh, there's not enough women's research, nobody's paying attention to women, blah 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 blah. You're heading up a company where it's all about the girls. I mean, yeah, there's some stuff about boys you can do, but really it's all about longevity for women. And how you go about doing it, I think, is really fascinating. Because anyway, I'm not going to go on for too long. So I'm gonna let the basic cat out of the bag, and then I'm gonna let you roll. Okay. So really, like, some of the big work that you do is around delaying or reversing menopause in women, and for two different outcomes. The main outcome that you stated to me before we started recording is really about longevity, living a longer, more vital life. But there's side benefits to this in certain cases, where you are, in many cases, extending fertility. And in a world where fertility is going up in smoke, and or women are delaying having babies and then finding themselves having problems conceiving, all really, really interesting stuff. So I'm going to leave the floor to you, because
Okay.
people don't need to hear my voice. They need to hear yours,
Okay.
and let you talk about how you're doing this and how you came about to be doing this in the first place. Like, what got you here?
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Natalie. Well, we've only got 60 minutes, so I don't know if I can give you the full backstory. That's way too long,
I
but
can give you 75.
okay.
Give me a short. We
Okay.
only want the short backstory, and then launch into the
Okay.
real
So
stuff.
okay,
The juice,
very
the juice.
quickly. Okay. So I trained in my background is as a marine and molecular biologist. I studied that, and I went and became a full blown commercial diver and biologist. But then I went and lived other parts of my life, traveled around the world, but always doing research. A few years ago, when my daughter, about the time my daughter was born, um, I came across this whole concept of fertility and issues of people having fertility issues. We didn't have any of those issues, thankfully, but I discovered a lot of friends of mine who did. And I started to look into it. And being formally trained in this area and having quite a lot of understanding, I sort of said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Why are they doing a sledgehammer to crack a nut? And, one thing after another. And I started pulling on the string. I then teamed up with my old college roommate, who she is also a biologist. And Debbie and I basically founded Austin Biotech with a view to looking at fertility issues with regard to women. And the reason is because, when I came across some friends of mine who'd gone through IVF, and they were crying, and they tried it twice and nothing was working. And I remember saying to them, I said, just relax, take it easy, and just just go on a holiday and have fun. And they came back, and suddenly they were pregnant, all of a sudden. And so what I discovered is that something came from that, which was not about pregnancy, but about vitality and about the energy that one has. And then when you look at it logically, it makes sense that you have this issue whereby we are designed as human beings to have children and spread our genetic code meiotically. That's, as they say in the Bible, go forth and multiply, whatever the terms are. All religions have the same thing, right? So all these things
Mhm.
are, well, wait a minute, what makes you a woman, what makes me a man is fundamentally that ability to spread your genetic code and create children, which is great. Now, the issue is that when women, and by the way, only 5 species have menopause, or the other 4 are all
Mhm.
marine mammals. They're whales, dolphins, elephant seals, I think they are the fifth one, and humans. Why humans, right? So there's a lot of reasons behind it. Forget all the reasons. Just work about what happens. The minute a woman goes through menopause, she starts to age more quickly, right? Because
Yeah.
things
Well, we
like,
know that.
yeah, hair, skin, brain fog, which we know talk about. But back in the good old days when we were cavemen, or women, cave people, we should say nowadays, cave people,
Mhm.
is that we didn't live past 40. Well, now you only get going. You only graduate from college when you're 25. You know, if you do a master's or if you're doing a law degree, and or a doctor, you're not going to be you're going to be 30 before you even get going. Well, you've got like 2 years before your fertility falls off a shelf. It doesn't make sense. So fundamentally, we're basically cave people in modern clothing. So biologically, we're still 300, 400,000 years old, but socially, we're way, way advanced. So there's a disconnect. And that disconnect is where we are aiming to fix or to ameliorate that disconnect. And that
Mhm.
really comes about by looking at it. Okay, we have an issue. Oh, I'm going through menopause. I'm aging, and my bone density is going down. Okay, let's take something to make my bones denser. My skin is drying up. Let's take some moisturizer. I've got brain fog. Let's take some Adderall. Whatever it is. Well, that's a patch up. That's a biological whack-a-mole. You're constantly playing, oh, this pops up here, that problem, that problem, that problem.
Well, but I think that, so a couple of things. One is, I do want to acknowledge that, I mean, there's definitely, like, the people that you described who went on holiday, conceived, and came back happily, lived happily ever after with their babies. There is those infertility issues, but there are also other infertility issues that are maybe a little bit more challenging. So I just want to air that so that people
Right,
listening, are not currently either have checked out or are screaming at their phone or wherever they're listening, going, that's not the only reason. You can't just wish it away. So we want to acknowledge that there are more serious fertility
right,
issues. And I do think that the work that you're doing
right,
probably addresses a lot of that, which we'll get
right.
into. The other thing I wanted to say is, in this whack-a-mole game, like, and this again plays into the work that you do. So it's a little bit of foreshadowing, but this whole movement of restoring women's hormones and keeping them going is also is maybe the earliest kind of work towards the work that you're doing at a much higher level, right? um like, I think that the whole world of bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, or as a recent guest of mine called it, replenishment therapy, because it's not about replacing, it's really about replenishing what you had, um, is moving it kind of is almost a precursor to the work that you do, because you're going at it at a deeper level,
Yes,
in a sense,
yes. I think
strategically.
yes, we are. What we're trying to do is fundament. Think of your body as a building. And that
Hmm.
building is on a piece of land. And that land you have the rights to for 125 years. And that's your telomeres. Let's not get technical, but just say after
Yeah.
125 years, that's it. You don't have any more time. The building's going to be knocked down. Let's just keep it simple. We're not going to get
Yeah.
complicated. And I know we don't have a lot of time,
Mhm.
so we have to. So, but I've
No,
never
no,
known.
it's okay. Don't worry about time. Okay,
And
let's
so,
have our
and so the
conversation.
thing about the building is I've never known a building that needs no maintenance for 125 years. Right.
Exactly.
So what we're looking at is understanding the fundamental essences of keeping that building structurally sound. So in other words, your bones are going to last, well, they last for centuries. You dig them up all the time, right? I mean, I know they're dead, but fundamentally bones last. And things like your nerve cells won't degenerate for 400 years. The fat cells around it, the Schwann cell will, but the actual neuron itself will not degenerate. But your skin and your joints and all of the sort of what I call the very active organs do. Skin, ovaries, testes, all the things are involved in some form of fertility. So what we're saying is, okay, you've got 125 years. you go through menopause at the average age of a white American female is 51. I think it's slightly lower for Southeast Asians and slightly higher for East Asians and Mediterraneans. But there we go. But fundamentally 51, 50, 51. So we're now expected to live to 85 and going up, although it's dropped a couple of years in the last few years, but fundamentally 85. So those 35 years are you're constantly having an uphill battle of whack-a-moling. Well, would it not make more sense to say to your body,
Yeah.
right, we can extend that because you've got the framework, your foundations, your steel girders on your skyscraper are great. We're just making sure the elevators work better. That's basically the concept. And rather than doing lots of tests, the single
Mm-hmm.
most important thing is within the endocrine system is, with women particularly, is fertility. Men too, but we're focusing on women here with fertility. And 85% of your hormones, 65% of your hormones come from your ovaries and your uterus, the rest from the adrenal gland, the fertility hormones, right? So if we can extend those follicles in the
Okay.
ovaries, and increase the follicular quality of your ovaries, you will by default create your own hormones for longer, wiping out the requirement for bioidentical hormones, wiping out, right.
Exactly.
And also it's more effective because it's from
Yeah.
internal. You need a lot less. It's also a lot more convenient. You do one procedure every
Mm-hmm.
2 years rather than doing it every 3 months. And I know it's different, but it's like psychologically you fire and forget, because you fire and forget as a woman before you go through menopause, so why not fire and forget afterwards? So we're not saying we can give you 200 years, 300
Mm-hmm.
years. We're just saying we're maxing it out. So would you not like to live to 110 with the physicality of a fit 45-year-old, a 40-year-old? I'll take that any day, right? And so that's what we're
Yeah.
looking at. And so
Sign me
yeah,
up.
absolutely.
Sign me up.
You're on it, right? So the thing is we look at that, but then when we did our first study on it, we used something called PRP, platelet-rich plasma, which I'm sure you've heard about. And it's taken from the blood, you draw it out,
Yeah.
and then you take the platelet-rich plasma and you inject it back into the ovaries. We're part of a clinical trial on that in 2018. We discovered very quickly it didn't have very much effect. It's great as a vampire facial, and even then, it's not that fantastic. I'm not going to get into those technicals, but fundamentally, it's not that great. But the delivery mechanism and the concept was fantastic. So we're going, okay, so how do we improve this? So we then looked at stem cells, allogenic stem cells from someone else's body, and also autologous stem cells from your own body. Now, I'll get
Mm-hmm.
into these technical details, which your audience are probably going to say, but wait, I know
Yeah.
these things. So we're going to go to them one by one. The reason being is that, as you
Yeah.
were saying with fertility issues, a lot of women have something called PCOS or POF, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or premature ovarian failure. Now, for some reason, this is increasing proportionally amongst
Mm-hmm.
society in G8 countries, or in G7 countries, in industrialized countries. So industrialized countries. Now, there are many possible reasons for that. Again, there's so many variables, we don't have the answer, but diet, water, exercise, and lifestyle have a huge role. Now, we decided to take the autologous stem cell route. The logic being as follows. If aging is a condition, it's not an illness. It depends on how people define it, but you just start to age. It's not because you're
Yeah.
fundamentally flawed or there's an issue that your bones are going to degenerate. It just ages. So if we can reinvigorate your body by itself and there's no structural defect in your genes, let's use that. A, it's cheaper. B, it's ethically easier to do. C,
Mm-hmm.
it's much better in terms of making things work. There's less problems for fewer moving parts. So we looked at that. And when we started our round two, It was the beginning. It was the first round was going to start in March of 2020. Now we know what happened in March.
What
I
beautiful
know what
timing.
great timing. I know. Great timing. We're like, yeah, it's going to be a great year, March of 2020. And
Yeah.
the next thing you know, we had 35 people waiting to go online and they couldn't go anywhere. We're like, what are we going to do with these people? What can they do? And so Debs and I were talking about it and we're like, well, what should we do? And we said, okay, well, let's get them fit, healthy. Let's look at their weight. Let's get them as healthy as we can. And we started to get them into really go deep dive into their diet, their exercise, their their state, not state of mind, that came later, but the diet and exercise, and also other things apart from the basic parameters that we looked at for our sort of second round of trials. And of course, everyone had time on their hands. And the one thing that's great
Hmm.
about what we're doing is most of the people that were involved with us were highly educated, a lot of them scientists and medics. So we were dealing with other doctors and we're helping them. So the great thing is they're fantastic because they know so much. And so we had one lady and we
Hmm.
discovered very quickly that by just changing some diet and exercise and certain other areas, that there was improvement in their blood work because we couldn't do anything for 3 or 4 months. So we're checking their blood work monthly. And one lady started to menstruate again after being 4 years menopausal. Um, and we're like, what? How did this happen? Right now,
Yeah. How did that? Okay. So let's stop. How did that happen?
right. Okay. So we again, one swallow does not make us a summer. So in other words, just because this one person happened,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean everything happened. But when we started to dig deeper,
Right.
it turned out that she's a psychologist. She had a very interesting method because she was dealing with all of her patients going crazy during the lockdown. And so I was like, well, we were not just me, but we were like her psychology offset. And what she had was this amazing relaxation technique. We checked her cortisol levels and discovered they're really, really, really low. I'm like, how do you do this? And she explained how she had this sort of methodology for relaxation. And we're like, can we borrow this, please? And so we looked at it. Now,
Hmm.
in terms of how good her egg quality was, we don't have the answer to that. We just had, she started to have the beginnings of menstrual cycles again. Now, they have subsequently, 2 years later, dissipated a bit, but there's been a massive increase. So they suddenly realized to ourselves, wait a minute, we have to look at this from a point of view of how do we improve this? Maybe we don't need to give everyone stem cell treatment. And then
Okay. Okay. Stop. Just 1 second. So how old was
60.
she? And so she was 60 years old. And so what do you attribute this restart of a cycle, like her cycle coming back in some
Right.
way? What do you attribute that to? Like, is it just because, people listening are like, well, did she start doing special exercises? Did she eat some kind of magical food? Or if she had access to this incredible relaxation technique, what is it that, is it a case of the physician not taking their own best advice and not putting into practice for themselves what they're putting into practice for their patients? Like, what do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, what do you attribute it
we
to?
call it the shoemaker syndrome. We're so busy fixing one else's
Yeah.
shoes. Yeah, well, I've suffered that myself. So there's a bit of that. There's definitely a bit of that with her. Obviously, I can't name names yet, although I'd like if we
No.
could, but we can't. Um, okay, the answer to that is in one word: Freudenspanner. That's the one word. It's the word that we created from that.
I knew you were going to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Right. And we talk about
Okay.
lifespan.
So why
Yeah.
don't you explain to the audience what
Spanner is.
Freudenspannen is? Yeah.
Freudenspanner is the quantitative effects that emotions have on the biomarkers of aging. So what we discovered is that, you know, for instance, my grandfather died in his mid 70s, and my great uncles, they lived to their 90s, even one's 101. The very similar genetics, obviously. Why did one die young and he looked really healthy and fit, and the other two didn't, and they lived a very much longer life? And the reason was he died of fundamentally a broken heart. We discovered something had happened after he had died that affected one of his children, and so that sort of really affected him. So I started to think about all these old wives' tales, people's hair turning white overnight. And I personally went through something a few years ago, and my hair started to fall out. And literally, I was, what's going on? It was clearly fine now,
Mhm.
So it was like, this was emotions. And we started to look at this. And with this person and a couple of other people that we looked at, because we had the time to work with them, and they had the time, most importantly, to work with us, that was the biggest thing. Because normally they just want to get into the procedure, they want it fixed, they want out. But because everyone was spinning their wheels, it allowed us to really dig deep into the 35 candidates that we had at the time. And from that, we came up with a structure that allowed us to basically incorporate elements of physicality, emotion, mental health, and spiritual health into a grading or a score
Hmm.
that would allow you to give an understanding of where you are fitting into the world. So, in other words, I will look at you and we can do a genetic test on you and we can give you a genetic marker.
Mhm.
But if I don't have a genetic test, I can ask you a few questions. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Where was your first few formative years of your life? What job do you do? Etc., etc. And from that, we can get a 70%, 65% accurate spin. Well, you might not know that you have a great great grandfather who's from the Sangdong Mountains in China, and therefore you have a tendency to have Usher syndrome. Well, you don't know that, but it's possible. You don't know. I
Right.
mean, I've heard some interesting stories recently from people that you just never know about. So these things happen. So, in other words, what we do is we've created a test that allows us to give you a baseline of who you are and how you will react in a given situation, which is very, very important because you might, for instance, you might have OCD, right? I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying you might do. So all I have to do is have a stain on this mug here like that would be so annoying for you it would drive up your adrenaline and your cortisol. But this happens. I mean, it's crazy. I've
Yeah, yeah,
seen it, and they
for
go,
sure. For sure.
and then suddenly what has a knock-on effect, and what's happening is it starts to change itself, and so your body will react this way. I mean, I've had some people say you have too much energy, Zach. You don't do, you're going to stress out. And you'll take my blood pressure and my heart rate, and it's like really good, really low. And you're like, well, why is that? Because
Mhm.
I'm not designed that way. I'm designed in a slightly different way. Everyone's slightly different. It's not one size fits all. It's a few sizes fit almost everyone, except, yeah,
Most.
most, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's those few sizes that we've managed to quantify. And so far, now we're in phase two, where we're up to a couple of hundred people going through this of some description, and it's staggered. It's starting to really show itself that these theories that we put together have validity. So back to your question with that lady. In her actual point, the biggest issue she had was lack of exercise that she didn't do correctly, and we adapted the exercise routine to make it work. We call it HUGS. It's an acronym, stands for hips, upper body, glutes, and shoulders. But basically, it's a four.
Cool.
It's a. Basically, women are slightly different to men physiologically, as you know, but women have bad upper body generally compared to men, right? Like men have bad core
Mhm.
compared to women. It's just the way they are. Because men are
Right.
stronger. They don't have to use their core to pick things up. They can just show it with their guns. You know what I mean? Right? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've
The
created, yeah,
muscle too.
exactly. We've created a superset. And that idea is that between a 17 to 27-minute routine that you can take anywhere with you. And you might need a rubber band, but you can add it on to your exercise routine. You can do it by itself. It's a combination of a bit of yoga, a bit of high intensity training, and we worked with a couple of Olympic coaches, in that area, which we can drop some names later. But if you in that area, but it works. And the beauty about it is it's a functional solution for people that don't have time or cannot find a way to make the time, right?
Mhm.
That's number
Mhm.
one, the exercise. So this is one thing that she needed. The other thing was her mental health was amazing, of course. So we obviously borrowed that. The other thing with her was her diet. Her diet was good, but she had she had like the closet donut syndrome. When she's stressing, she takes out a donut because she needs the sugar because she's dealing with other people. So what we did is we took a step back and made people have the 1,000-yard view of this is what you look down when you look down on this. And so that's how it worked. So fundamentally, though, we did her genetics after this result. So this was way after the event, but we didn't know at the time. But her genetics were pretty good, so she didn't have any major issues. And I think this is the thing that we have to be cautious about. You're quite right. You can't manifest. You can't manifest yourself to everything. It's just not possible. I mean, unless you're like Buddha or something, you know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. So like
Yeah.
you have to understand your limitations. Like, I wanted to be a gymnast, but I'm nearly 2 meters tall. So I'm never going to be a gymnast. I'm never going to be that guy. So I have to play basketball. That's how it is, right? It's what can you do?
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge this is what you are, and this is what you have to do. So once you accept where you are, that gives you far more strength and power. Because one of the areas with this, again, with this person was once we fixed, I don't like the word fixed, realigned. What's the word you used? Replenished. Yeah. Once we
Yeah.
realigned,
Yeah. Yeah.
once we
Yeah.
realigned, once we realigned the issues, we found that with a lot less effort, we get a lot more results. Now, that's number one. Okay. The question is, though, to be frank, our average age of our patients is around 52. So,
Okay.
although it's starting to spread the areas because obviously younger people are wanting to come into us to prevent, and older people are realizing this might work for them. So, the oldest person we have is pushing 70. But
Okay.
again, one of the issues you have when you're dealing with people who are older is that there's a lot more damage to the body, right?
That's been
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
remember, every 7 years your body replenishes itself. The cells replicate, but you replicate. If you're a Coke can, you're replicating all the dents that you've done over the last 7 years. So one of the other areas that we look at again with Freud and Spanner is things like your what we call melancholy. So there's 8 categories, and melancholy and is basically how you view the world and what you do when you deal with issues and problems. So a lot of
So, like the cup half, people who see the world as a cup half
yeah,
empty
yeah,
versus people who
yeah,
see the world a
yeah,
cup half full.
right.
Yeah.
But this is the irony about it, that is that just because you look at the world half full, or the cup half full, doesn't mean it's the right answer. Because sometimes you have to
Right.
look at it as half empty to motivate yourself to make sure it gets done. Sometimes when I'm good, I'm fine. We've discovered that sometimes people with very good genetics are actually the most unhealthy because they know they have good genetics and so they abuse them. It's like it's so weird, right? It's so strange. So this is
Yeah.
what we've looked at. So what we've done is we've created an analysis and a template document whereby you can come to us and you say you came to Zach, I want to do this, and we'll say, okay, Natalie, hold on a second, right? I'm sure and then you give me all of the statistics and then the science and the this and the that, and loads of stuff, and you're like, okay, what about this? What about Peterson's thing on Alzheimer's? Because I've got an Alzheimer gene and I've got this, and well, actually, let's take a step back and let's look at the whole picture. Yes, you might have APOC1, APOC1, or whatever it is, right? But you might have another gene that offsets this. So let's look at this in its entirety and see where you stand. And then let's plan a lifestyle that works for you, that can sync with what you're doing. So if I say to you, okay, if someone comes to us and I say, well, really what you need to do is start running marathons. Well, they're not going to start running marathons. I mean, it's not going to work. And I say this from a personal standpoint, from personal experience, because we we when we started everything, I was pretty fit and healthy, and then a few things happened. I had an accident. I broke a foot, and then I had COVID, and this and the other, and then there was death in the family. All these things happened, all very, very close together, and it really affected me. And I couldn't get fit and healthy because I had problem issues of life, of dealing with things, and I couldn't get my head above water. Wait a minute, I'm in the industry and I can't do this. What's going on? Right? And I
Mm-hmm.
had to go to someone else and ask them for help. And they helped
Yeah.
me. And that's what we're about. We are about helping you fish, not giving you fish. Right? Learn, teaching,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the difference. And so the best thing about this is that when we look at this, is that you realize you might come to you saying, "Oh, but Zach, I need to do this procedure. I need to do this. Sign me up. I want to pay for everything." No, 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 no. Because we're not about that. We're about doing what's right for you, that's best for you. And that might not
Mm-hmm.
be the most money for us or the best for us, but what's best for you is best for us in the long term. And that's what we want to do.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is if you don't address the foundation in every way, foundation being your physical foundation, your nutrition, your mindset, your emotional state, all of these things, all of the other fancy stuff that you do, we'll call it fancy for lack of a better term, ultimately you're not going to get the full benefit from it. Plus, establishing that foundation sometimes will actually get you much further ahead than you could have imagined otherwise. So when you look at when you've done that foundation work with people, and we're going to get into the fancy stuff soon, people hang in with us, because this is going to be so worth the wait. um do you ever look at someone and say, we don't believe you should go ahead and have this procedure? We don't believe that. And I mean, I'll let the sort of cat out of the bag. You've mentioned it before. We don't believe that in your case, ovarian rejuvenation is going to be beneficial or is appropriate. Do you ever say that to someone? Or is there more a question of, not everybody can afford it. Not everybody wants to do that kind of thing.
Uh, all of the above. Absolutely. In fact, so the first thing is there's no free lunch. Okay, with this, what I mean
Mm-hmm.
by that is when you reignite the ovaries, you reignite everything. So if there's bad stuff in there, you're reigniting that. So we have to do all of our tests for cancer marker tests. We look at ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, even things like breast cancer, even though it's not technically part of that, but everything's connected. We look at
It's all linked.
of the
Yeah.
big six cancers, five of them are all related to some form of reproductive organ, right? Ovarian, testicular, uterine, prostate, etc.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing we do from a point of view of where we're in the longevity game. If you come to us now
Mm-hmm.
or you come to us in 10 years' time, it's fine by us. You're coming back to us if we do it right. And so we have to do what's right for you. And that's professional courtesy, professional pride, whatever you want to call it. So in
Professional ethics.
ethics. Thank
We'll
you.
call it
You're
ethics.
much
Yeah.
you're much better at saying these things. By the way, it's a great sum up. You
Actually,
named it. You nailed it so well. It's so good. I was like,
well, it's actually professional integrity
integrity.
is
Okay,
what you're
yeah,
talking
it's
about.
integrity.
Yes.
So the thing is, that's the most important thing because it's, as I said, this is about doing the right thing for the long term. But the biggest issue we have with when we say people shouldn't do things is if they come to us with a viewpoint, and back onto this ethics point, is they may be in their late 50s. They have
Okay.
made a lot of mistakes in their lives, but they, by all intents and purposes, extremely successful. So in other words, they have everything that you look at on the outside, but inside it's a mess. And
Okay.
they usually think they can fix it by having a child or doing this.
Mm.
They're the ones where we're like, no. And we'll be very frank about it. We can't exactly say, no, you can't, but we'll say, these are our reasons. Be very cautious about why you're doing something. Steady. And that's the whole thing about the analysis, because it slows people
Mm-hmm.
down and makes them think about what they're doing. Because we're in this modern world, we're so quick about, oh, let's do this, let's do that. I've got to do it now. I want it
Mm-hmm.
now. I want it now. I want to be fixed now. Well, you can't just be fixed now. It never works that way. So that's what we do. But we look at the fundamental medical stuff, which is are you physically fit and able to do it? Do you have, if you have Turner's syndrome, we can't do it. Have you had a hysterectomy? All these things. But partial hysterectomies, ironically, we can still work with, depending on what you're looking for, right? So what we're looking for,
Yeah.
are you looking to keep your vitality? Are you looking to have a child? Why are you looking to have a child? Do you have a partner? Are you with that person? Are they on board with this? Because you'll be
Hmm.
surprised. And also, there's
No.
so many areas, so we have to sort of take those steps down, and then we get to what you call the fascinating stuff, which actually I find the bit we've been talking about fascinating far more than.
Well, they're both
Yeah,
fascinating. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's I think what's fascinating about what we've been talking about all along is, and I mean, a lot of us pay lip service to the foundation work. A lot of us talk about how important nutrition, sleep, lifestyle, stress management is, but I think we sometimes fail to fully appreciate how powerful that work is. And as you witnessed with this 160-year-old person whose whose body just kind of said, "Oh, wow, we can get that machinery going again." Now she'd been in menopause for 4 years, not 10 years. So who knows, right? So I agree with you that that is in many ways more fascinating, because the next piece of the puzzle is like, well, this is an advanced procedure. It's taking these stem cells, you're rejuvenating the ovaries. The fact that they can be rejuvenated in the first place is a bit fascinating, but still, to think that all that not boring but simple, seemingly simple work could be so powerful is absolutely fascinating. But at the same time, a lot of people will do that work, and their ovaries are, they're not going to start bleeding again. So
right,
that is somewhat of a
right,
unique, as you said, she's an
right.
outlier. You had however many people in your cohort, of the 35 women, one
Well,
of them,
we're a
this
bit
is going to
higher
happen.
now. We're in the hundreds now, but we're in different stages.
Yeah.
So when the other thing
But
we,
how many people have you seen?
yeah,
Yeah. How many people have you seen reverse
yeah,
menopause
no, that was an out.
through the foundation?
Well,
She's
yeah,
an
outline,
outlier.
absolutely, and of course, and the thing is, it sounds good for the soundbite, but we're talking about statistics here, right? So I get it,
Yeah.
and so the thing is that when we come to the nitty gritty, at the end of the day, no matter how hard you want to manifest it, there's still the rubber hits the road, right? So now we're talking
Yeah.
about, as you call, the interesting stuff. So the thing is, we take the stem cells and we apply the stem cells. We extract them from your own body, right? So I'll take you through the.
From where? Are you taking bone marrow or
Okay,
fat?
I'm about to take you through the whole process. So we'll do the whole thing once
Okay.
slowly.
Okay, I'll stop asking
Yeah,
questions.
slowly but surely. I'll
Shush.
take slowly through the process. So very good. Adipose and fat and stem cells we don't use. They're too weak. We
Interesting.
use mesenchymal stem cells from the bone marrow. Now, I'm sure the scientists among you are going to start saying to me, but they're not pluripotent, and they don't do this and they don't do that. And I'm not going to go into the full details online, but I will say this: we have a way of separating out the most potent stem cells within the bone marrow, right?
Okay.
And we take it out. Approximately 60 mil extraction goes down to 9 mil centrifuge. It's done in
Wow.
real time. So there's no wasting. It's done in real time. You go under the. It's a very short procedure, but it happens very quickly. And we add to that. We add and we put this into an injectable into a needle, and it's injected into the ovary. Now, and that's done through a transvaginal snake. So there's no cuts. There's not even there's very low level of anesthetic, so you don't feel anything, but it's not like going up full under. Very very easy to do and very low invasive properties. It was done by Dr. Suya. She's done most of that stuff. And the thing about that is we are taking existing technology and delivery mechanisms. We're minimizing all of the variables to make it as simple as possible. You don't reinvent the wheel.
Mhm.
The wheel already works. So just improve the tire. You know what I'm saying? The kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's the first thing. We then have another little speciality where we add exosomes to the stem cell mixture. Now, again, amongst your scientists in the audience, but exosomes don't do that. Okay, right. Okay. It's a special type of exosome that we use, autologous exosome. Again, everything is autologous. And autologous means after logos, from yourself, for the Greek word, as opposed to allogenic, which means someone else. So we
Yeah.
take this exosomes and we add the two together in a mixture, but we've taken the exosomes from you 3 weeks previously and they've been frozen because they last for 6 months. Now, there's two things for that. One is it allows the procedure to be very, very quick when you're doing the actual procedure in the surgery. But the most important thing as well is it allows you to have a proceed where you're preparing yourself, all that prep work. You know it's going to happen. You're taking your blood out in 3 weeks' time. You're going to. So psychologically, back to the Freudian spanner, we're mitigating cortisol levels, adrenaline levels, improving serotonin, etc., etc. We're relaxing you. We're Kobe beefing you. You know what I mean? We're keeping you together. So yeah, so that's not the best term, but yeah. But the thing is, so that's what we do, and we add them together. Now, the mixture we use is our special sauce, our equation that we work combined with ovarian size, with body size, and a certain number of areas. Now, I'm not going to give you those formulas online, but we have them. So we inject them in, and then that's it. You wake up, and then it's a 25-minute procedure. That's it. You wake up and you're done, and you have to stay in a hotel round the corner from the clinic for one night, and then you can go home, right? And go on.
I was just going to ask, do you treat both ovaries or just
Great
one?
question. Both, assuming you have to. Yeah, both. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both.
So
Okay.
now remember, this for us is not about a trial study of, oh, is this going to work? We're now saying we know this works. We want to improve it as much as possible. So this is the bit that's really interesting. After you've done the procedure, we monitor you for 9 months. And we have home blood test kits that every 6 weeks you have these test kits and you take a little swab and a little pinprick and then you send it to us in the lab and we monitor it. And you have a consultant that works with you and they speak to you between 2 to 3 times over the 9 month period. And we see what your state of mind is. And then we have something else as well that we use, which we call it Ventbox. And it's basically a recording. You can record. It's really just a glorified kind of like you can leave a message through your cell phone. We never really listen to them, but you can scream, you can shout, you can leave messages, you can delete the messages, but we keep it as a data record because if we suddenly see that your blood work is a bit skewiffy, like, well, what's going on? And we'll go back to the date of the last 3 weeks and we'll say, oh, look, on March the 19th, you left a message saying I couldn't get my car because someone towed my car and I had a really stressful day and I missed this appointment. Ah, that's why her cortisol levels are up. So for us, it's a way of leaving. And also, it's also very good for some people because they need to vent. And it's interesting. Some people use it, some people don't.
Well, it's so interesting because instead of writing it
Yeah, it's so
down,
boring.
it's like real time, like you speak it, like there's almost no, people don't, some people like journaling, but a lot of people don't. And it's immediate and in the moment, not to mention the fact that I'm sure that in the recording, you pick up emotion, you pick up the energy of the person in
Right,
that moment very
right,
differently than if they were filtering
right,
it through their brain to the pen.
right. Exactly
Right?
right.
It's like the
Yeah.
unfiltered, what's happening in this moment
Right. Well,
record.
you're amazing. You're really good. You're
That's so
nailing it all.
cool.
Totally. It's like, wow. That's Ven, but that was Deb. She came up with Venbox. We were leaving us each other messages between it, and so it
Yeah.
works. And we have a lot of our patients, they love it. They leave messages. And of course, from our point of view, they're not leaving it on our emails, on our phone. And you're right. That
No,
inflection, I know
exactly.
exactly. That inflection is there. So the procedure we call it is called Reduvacite, which is rejuvenating cells, Reduvacite. And the 9 months following, we monitor you. Now, what happens with some people, as we said, there's about an 85% success rate. Now, I have to define this success rate very clearly. Success can mean a number of things. Success could be hormone replacement, could be menstrual cycle restarting, could be the ability to have egg quality improves, right? There's a number of areas, but fundamentally, in 85% of the cases, there is significant improvement of hormonal balance within the endocrine or the fertility system. Yep. Yes,
Okay.
Natalie.
I have a question.
Natalie in the
So
back. You're
I'm putting my hands
Natalie in
up
the
so I
back. Yes. What can I say?
putting my hand up so I don't interrupt him because I have so many questions and I don't want
No,
to
go
interrupt
for the
you.
questions.
So what about the what we're taught that we have all of our eggs as women
Right.
as you're right, and that they age with you and that egg quality declines as you age, not to mention the fact that they are, they along with the rest of your body are subjected to all of the external stressors and whatever that the world, your life throws at you through life. You just mentioned improved egg quality. So does this treatment with the stem cell, your secret sauce stem cells and exosome, you know elixir, let's say, that is reintroduced to the ovaries, are you saying that that actually improves egg quality so that in those cases where restoring fertility is the goal, and it's been established that this is a good idea for this person because of all the criteria that you mentioned earlier, that now, because of course we talk about pregnancy over 40 being much riskier both to the mother but also to the for the child. So
Okay.
come
Okay.
back to the
Okay.
question that I
Great.
keep asking and
Okay.
interrupting
No,
myself on is, do you improve the egg quality and
right. Great
viability?
question. Yes and no. Okay. So, right.
Okay.
Let's go answer that. You asked me a lot of questions there. So I'm going to take the first question. We have been taught that you have a certain number of eggs, and that's it. You get no more, but you've got thousands of eggs. So you only go through a few hundred in your life, and then the rest stay in there and they fall apart. That's sort of true.
Yeah.
What has been discovered
Okay.
is that if you add a stem cell to an ovary, if you attach it to an ovary, it can differentiate or become an egg. There is a couple of studies that show this. It's using water-derived jelly cells, but it's a study that shows this. It's part of our papers that we put in. The reason we use the exosomes is because it acts like a biological chewing gum to stick it on longer. So that gives you the chance that it might improve the egg quality. It might create a new egg. So the logic being that, yes, those stem cells are old-ish, but the reality is we call it the
Yeah.
40 plus 40 equals 0. Why is it a 40-year-old, two 40-year-olds can have a child that's 0 in age? Well, hold on a minute. I mean, when my last child, I was 44 and her mother was 40. And we had a 0 age child, right? It was totally, So in other words, what is it about that causes that when the stem cell differentiates into another type of cell? Differentiating is going from a block of clay into something, a hair, skin, eye. At that moment in time, it is
Yep.
guaranteed. It was year 0. It ages to the surrounding cells around you very quickly. Now we don't understand why that does that, but logically speaking, for a brief period, it's going to be a very young egg, and then it will start to age to the other eggs around it. And that has a knock on, and that's what we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at with the studies in phase 3 and where we are now. So we're looking at that area of exactly that question. And that's one of the areas that we're studying. We look at with the blood work and some of the FSH levels and so on and so forth to see that level. So in answer to your question, we don't have all the data yet to give you 100% definitive answer, but so far anecdotally it is showing that this will work, and that's what we're studying at the moment, right? Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your, yeah?
Yeah. No, I mean, what you're saying is, so far from what you can tell,
Yes.
it seems to
Yeah.
help, and there's still work to be
Yes.
done,
And I would
right? Like, I
exactly,
mean, you're not,
I would love to have,
you can't give a blanket answer. Yes, stem cells and exosomes will improve the quality of the eggs because you don't have that full answer
yeah,
elucidated yet. I mean, you're very much in a cutting edge space here where, you're not yet into this to the point where you can say, and we have X number of women who we perform this procedure on every 2 years from the time that they were fill in the
yeah,
blank 50, 60, 45, and they are now
yeah,
110 years old, and here's what their lives has looked
yes,
at. You're essentially leveraging science and projecting outcomes based on
R-
what you know and what you believe.
Right, right. So now let's get to the next bit of this, which is this is so you're right. So
Okay.
that's great. So we now know this. Now there's some of my fellow scientists who are far more accomplished and famous than I am, and they're saying to you, but hold on a minute. This doesn't, you can only use autologous for, it's got one level of entropy and that's it. And after that, it's not going to work out, right? But true. But if we can extend menopause by 5 years, we're giving you, Natalie, an extra 11 years of life and higher quality. Now, that's a very clear study that's been done many, many times. The later you go through menopause on average, the longer you will live. Ironically, it's every 2.1 years for every year longer you go through after the average of menopause. It's ironic because 2.1 is the number of children you need to have to keep the population steady, which I think is ironic. But there you go. It's just but
Interesting.
so that's very important. So what we're saying is what we're trying to do is if we can do two sets of extension of 10 years, we're giving an extra 22 years of life, right? Now that's
And not just
but
life.
quality of
Yeah.
life,
Like I think,
quality of life. Yeah,
yeah, because I think what we want to kind of emphasize here is, and you talked about this earlier, it's, and I've said this many times, I think in many ways, we've solved a little bit for living longer and living long. It's about it's now we're like going back going, yeah, that's great, except I don't want to spend my last fill in the blank 5, 10, 15 years sitting in a wheelchair like a noodle, having my butt wiped by somebody else, not remembering
right,
my name. Like I don't want to live to 120 if that's what it
right.
means. I want to kick ass until the day I don't. And you, before we started recording, you said exactly that to
Yeah,
me. He said, here's the goal here.
yeah,
The goal is to live, to be vital, to be youthful in every way until one day,
yeah,
the light gets turned off and so be
yeah,
it. Like we all have to leave at some
yeah,
point, but the point is, how are we going to live this back
yeah.
half of our
Well, but
life, right?
yeah,
And our expectations as a society are going up and up and up. And this is what you're all
yeah,
about here.
exactly right. So in other words, it's maximizing what you have. So in other words, would live to 100 110 with the physicality of a fit 40-year-old. I mean, I'll take that.
Yeah, which would be pretty
I'll take that
amazing.
any day. Now, the interesting thing about this is it breaks it down. So there's again, we have to break this down. This is where the science, as you call the interesting stuff, is really interesting because there are breakdown areas. Okay, you stop. You fundamentally stop growing at 25. At 25 to
Yeah.
35, you're stasis. At 35, after that, you start to die, however slow it is. So, in other words, what I mean by die is the number of cells produced is less than the number of cells that die, but it's minimal.
Yeah.
But actually, in many terms, your strength and other areas of your body actually improve in your 30s and 40s, even 50s. But once you hit
Hmm.
65, you start to what we call age. And once you hit 85 and 86, you start to genetically age more quickly, right? And again, this is very
Yeah.
top line without going into details. I'm just giving you have to just take this as a
Yep.
soundbite. So what we're looking at is saying, okay, well, we accept that 35 you stop growing. At 65, this age that we've got to push that 65 as far to 85 as we can. That's the easy bit. That's the bit we're already able to do. We can push out that 65 to 85 with just these procedures, with diet and exercise, even a few supplements, maybe if you've got the testing done, a couple of peptide shots here and there, but you've got to know what you've got to do, right? And you've got to have, and it's
Yeah.
very, very semi bespoke, right? Now, when we hit 85, the 85 to 120, that's the bit that we're still. That's why when someone comes to us and they're 70 years old, that's a lot harder to work with. But someone who's 60 even, that's as long as they're relatively fit and healthy. If they come to us and they're 60, 300 pounds, type 2 diabetic, they've got emphysema, well, it's going to be tough, right?
Heavy drinker, heavy smoker.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
Sorry, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Longer road.
that's going to be a lot
Yeah.
harder to do. But that's the key. So that's the really important bit. So the bit that now we're getting to, as you call the interesting bit again, the really interesting bit is how we're going to be able to
This is all interesting.
improve that genetic quality going down the line. Now, the people that are working with us, as I said, after the 9 months, depending on their results, so where they are, we can offer another booster of stem cells again.
Okay.
And so that the idea being is we're trying to keep it so we can see how long we can extend it for. So originally we thought the effects from phase 1 would be 3 to 6 months. We discovered it's closer to
Okay.
2.5 years so far, right? Now,
Wow.
yes, wow, exactly. But we also discovered that the minute it happens, you don't get an instant result. It can anything from 10 days to 3 months to see an effect, which is why we
Of the
yes,
treatment.
yes, it can be up to 3 months before you see an
Okay.
effect, because that was the thing. We're thinking, well, hold on a minute, why isn't this working now? It should instantaneously work, because we're in this, as you say, modern day culture. We got to have it right now. I need it now. I need my Instagram shot, bang, and it doesn't work that way.
No, well, think about what you're asking the body to do. Like you're literally, it's, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're resetting the signaling of the body at a cellular and genetic level to re-express as a more youthful version of itself. So it's going to take time for those resets to kind of show up as cells turn over. So my question to you is, are women seeing facial rejuvenation? Are
Right.
they seeing, right? Like, are we seeing the aesthetic piece as well? Because before we started recording, you're like, yeah, it's longevity, but we're also in
Right.
the business of
Right.
aesthetic. And so, and I've often said, that as a younger woman, I would have told you I will never do anything to my face as I age. As a 60-year-old woman, I'm sitting there going, yeah, so here's the thing. If I'm going to live another 25 to
Right.
30 years, I may or may not want to finish looking like a
Right.
raisin. So in the work that you do, because at menopause, our skin starts to age. It thins, like, and it's on our face, it's in our vaginas. Like all of these parts of us are aging in a material way. Are you observing that there's a reversal of that aging, or is it just being stopped where it is and you're preventing it from
Right.
progressing?
It stopped. And there are reversals, but it depends. So, for instance, it depends on the type of person you are. Some people have bad necks. Some people have bad hands. Some people get lines on their face because a lot of it's to bone structure. If you've got cheekbones, everything hangs, right? If you haven't got cheekbones,
Yeah,
that's why a lot of people put the sort of golf ball things here to give themselves cheekbones, right? And I
bad
know,
idea.
but I'm just
Yeah.
saying. So that the answer to that is the reason why we talk about aesthetics is because skin and ovaries are similar types of cells. And so, therefore, we
Hmm.
can. Again, that's very top line. Before anyone critiques it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah,
can
yeah,
approach
yeah,
me
yeah.
directly if they want.
I
Yeah,
don't have an
yeah,
ovary on
yeah.
my face. I
But
know.
but
Yeah.
fundamentally, the way that they react. So think of it like a balloon. So nerves and bones are far more differentiated, specialized. So they're like a balloon that's
Hmm.
all the way fully maxed out. So if you put a pinprick, it just explodes. That's why when you break your spine, you can't reheal your spine so easily. And most, longevity and genetics is very male driven. It's all about how we can fix the problem, right? Right, which is very male, right? The
Yeah.
second thing, but with ovaries and testes and skin, they're like a half blown up balloon. There's a lot more flexibility in them because they're constantly sloughing, they're constantly changing, updating. The fastest aging cell in the body is the female mammary gland, right? That's
Right.
skin is always aging. That's why you exfoliate. We call it senescent cell exfoliation, whatever they call it. It's basically exfoliation. It's getting rid of the dead stuff to let the
Yeah.
new stuff grow through, right? Pruning, whatever you want to call it. What we're saying is it's like a half blown up balloon. So if you put a pinprick in it, technically speaking, theoretically, if you're quick enough and you could patch it quickly enough, it won't explode. It will just deflate a bit. So you can put something on really quickly. So that principle is how we work with ovarian rejuvenation. We've chosen ovarian rejuvenation because it will improve the systems internally. Now,
Yeah.
what we're looking at, and we've been looking at this this is not available for consumption yet, but this is our level now, is we're taking the same principles of putting it into ovaries onto skin, and you can
Okay.
fix the skin. But again, if you don't have the internal improvements, you're just patching over the top.
Hmm.
So in answer to your question, will you see a difference? Yes, you'll see more energy. Yes, you'll see more moisture. Yes, you'll see more youthfulness. Yes, your hair will be thicker. But at what level? We don't know. I just don't know. We just don't know, right?
And it
And it
depends.
depends.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why, by having the background of analysis to beforehand, we have a much better understanding of how to improve. So if we know that you have an issue with hydration, so longevity is based around three things: bones, water, and protein in the simplest form. And those, what I mean by bones is you can't do anything without skeleton. And I mean joints,
Mhm.
skeleton, bones, right? Water is
Yep.
hydration, as you were talking about, skin, vagina, all these things, hydration. But it's not about drinking water. It's about the
Yeah.
ability of the cell to hydrostatically absorb the water. It's a very different concept. You can't just drink a load of water. It's how it works. That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
cellular level. And then the last one is
Yeah.
protein, losing muscle mass and maintaining the
Hmm.
ability to maintain protein. So those are the three. Everyone's telling me I've got to do it to three. I can never get it down to three. It's the closest I can do it to, right? Those three basic. And then the subcategories in each one. But those three,
A hundred
yeah.
percent.
But
Yeah.
those three, so in answer to that, we're trying to address those three things. So with what this does is the hydration, yes, it affects you. Yes, with the bones, yes, with the muscles, you'll get better muscular tone. It doesn't mean you can't exercise. You have to still exercise. You should have, and then
No.
for instance, we'll discover, I don't know what blood group you are, but say you're O positive. I'm just going to say, right? But say you're O positive. We will then give you a much more meat heavy diet because you generally work better with protein absorption from meat. Now, the best protein to absorb, the way to absorb proteins from oily fish. That's number one, and eggs.
Hmm.
And then it's red
Hmm.
meat,
Hmm.
and then it's white meat, and blah, blah, blah. Now, beans have protein, true, but they don't have all the types of proteins, and they're not as effective. But if you're blood group A, you're far more able to take your protein from vegetarian sources. So we have a series of like diets and stuff like that. So what we do is we know that because we've done all the testing beforehand, once you go through the procedure, we're giving you the best way to maximize the effect of that. So in other words, it's like, but we have 10 basic types of diet that we work with. We have a chef who works with us, Aline Faro. She's the chef for Life Extension. I'm sure you've heard of them, right? She does. So
Yep.
Aline and I have been coming up with the menus, or us rather. She's come up with the menus. We're just scientifically data pointing it. So obviously it's heavy olive oil. We
Interesting.
use marula oil, which is another topic another time, which is like olive oil but doesn't smell as bad. It's amazing. We work with a
What do you mean doesn't smell as bad? Olive oil doesn't smell bad.
I'm Greek. I'm from Crete. I'm telling you, comparatively speaking,
You
yeah, I
know
know, but
oil.
I know oil very well. I know I'm from a Greek olive oil area. But the marula oil is well, it's supposed to be eukaryote. It's the same thing. It's a type of it's a fruit because olive oil is a fruit, it's not a nut. And
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
it's a fruit, and marula has the same properties: antiviral, low, high mono unsaturated fat, very good for moisture retention. So you see, this is the thing: moisture, hydration, keeping it in the skin. So we use stuff like that. So say, for instance, we discovered that you are a blood group O positive.
Okay. No.
Yeah.
No. I'm a B.
Are you
I'm a
are
B.
you a B? Okay. So
I'm a
does
B.
that mean that you have some Central Asian blood in you, by any chance?
No, I'm full on
Are you?
Mediterranean.
Where from? But
Yeah.
like from Middle East and Mediterranean?
So I was born in Morocco, but if you believe 23andMe, I'm
Syrian?
overwhelmingly Italian.
Italian? Oh,
Italian,
really?
which is shocking because I would have thought Spanish because that's where my family comes from originally, but I'm more Italian.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so basically you're similar to Greeks. Yeah, they say una frate, una fratella, whatever. Yeah, right. So we have a basic diet. So for instance, your blood group B. So we would look at and we say, okay, you would be a plant heavy diet. So you'd have some meat, but you'd be very plant heavy. So we give you a basic. This is the sort of way you should eat food, right? Then we give you some menu
Interesting.
ideas, and we have all these menus, and we give you menus, and they're all the calorie breakdowns. But you know what? I don't want to be a lab rat and taking 50 pills and looking at my weighing it. I just take a handful of this and stick it in. So what we do is we give you an idea. This is roughly your calorie intake. This is roughly what you need to do. Take this stuff and mix it up here. Don't do things like don't as we one of our other team members, Walter. He has he does his porridge oats, and he has all these nuts in. I was like, Walter, man, this stuff is crazy. He said, this like, and he said, no, it's all healthy calories. I was like, okay, let me do my porridge oats. Let's do your one. And we compared them. And mine was like 200 calories, really filling, lovely, everything. His one was 850 calories. And I was like, but dude, now you know why and it's not, it doesn't taste any better because we're so taught that you have to make things complicated. And that's the thing. So that's what we do. And so by doing that, we're maximizing. So for instance, we discover, so you're Italian. So that, okay. So you've got Mediterranean. Okay. So we would work with you about how to minimize. So we probably give you things like high levels of sage tea, high levels of mint tea, flascuni, which would be a good diuretic, but at the same time is hydrating, hydrostatically hydrating. We would recommend probably you have medium skin, so we'd recommend you putting on the oily fish, but very little sort of uric acid, lamb, stuff like that. Whatever. Those we'd have to. I can't give you the answer right now, but
You
yeah,
don't need to give me my diet right now. It's fine. We'll do that
but that's what
offline.
I'm saying.
But
That's what we do. So that's how we improve your aesthetics. Now, what we like to be able to do is take our technology, which we're doing right now, and again with a very small sample size, and we're going to take that technology and apply it like you do with your vampire facial, which was originally PRP, and we realized that it's blah. So we're now doing Reduvacite facials. So we take your stem cell, but the problem with that is that stem cells have to be really fresh. You can't mess around with it. It's a lot more intricate. You can't just take it at home and put it on. So it's not quite. It's still an involved process. And the other problem is you can't trust the patient to do the right thing because there's too many moving parts. We have to make sure we control everything that is really, really crucial to the procedure. So we can.
so it's almost like an advanced microneedling, even deeper than that kind of procedure.
Not deeper.
Like it's like probably the V cell facial that I did, which was essentially a series of injections, more injections than anyone would ever want have in their face over a lifetime over the course of an hour and a half.
How did you find about the V cells? What did you think of it?
It's hard to say because I did it. I mean, the way to have tested it would have been to have done the right side of my face and left the left side of my face.
Just
on
do
its
one
own,
each hand. Do each
right?
hand.
Or do each hand. So, I would say that overall, I have really good skin.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
And I've done 2 of these now. And given my age and the amount of sun exposure that I've had in my lifetime, I'm in pretty good shape. I don't know how much of that I can attribute to the V cell facial because it's impossible for me to know what I would have looked like if I hadn't.
Okay, so let's talk about aesthetics because I love the aesthetics. But I'm all about potions and lotions. I love all this stuff. This is the bit I.
Well, we want both, right?
Well, they're connected. They're connected because if you feel good, it affects your physiology, right? So there's other areas too. So let's get back onto the aesthetics. And the thing is here is when you look at skin, what is it in your opinion is the most important thing for your skin to improve? I mean, generally, you like collagen, hydration.
Well, so here's what I've now learned as a podcaster, right. And I think that it's going to make people very sad if they haven't already glommed onto this reality. We can do whatever the heck we want for our skin, but it's what's under the skin that's going to affect how we really look and how we age. So the infrastructure under the skin, the collagen, the muscles, the elastin, the bones, that when we age, it's the breakdown of that underlying infrastructure. So we can have the most beautiful skin on the planet. If it's sagging, it's still going to sag. So most likely you're going to say, I think hydration at a cellular level is going to be a massively important piece of the puzzle to address for skin aesthetics. But to me, to not look old is I have to be able to address the underneath, what's going on under the skin.
Okay. uh, there's hydration, fat, and elastin, right? Hydration and fat are the easy ones to deal with. We can use propane diols, we can use marine oil, we la la la. But elastin is the really hard one to deal with. Elastin is really tricky. And then getting a penetrating peptide that can go into the cell to do that. So what we're doing here is we're reinvigorating the skin cells in the same way we're reinvigorating the ovarian cells. And ironically, it's the one time that women are less complicated than men, because with and this is my line I like, but which is that test
You heard it
yeah,
here
yeah,
first,
yeah.
ladies.
Testes are much more difficult. They're more dynamic than ovaries, because you're born with your eggs. Well, born with your eggs, but you have eggs that where constantly the sperm's being generated. Women work on a 28-day cycle. Men, we can't even work it out. I mean, I reckon it's probably about an 8-hour cycle, but let's not get into that. But what I'm saying is that fundamentally the the way to fix the cell. So you're saying hydration. Yeah, but I can fix your hydration with a certain level. The hydrostatic level, that's true, but that comes internally. That comes from your
Hmm.
from your internal endocrine system. Whereas the elastin can be fixed. So what we can do is we can do a hybrid system. We improve your internals, then we put a couple of little extra go faster wings on the car, and we'll make it go a bit faster, and maybe put a bit more low rider, low profile tires. But fundamentally, the axle and everything else is really looking good, and the chassis fat solid, and that's key. And that's what we want to do, and that's what we're looking at doing with the aesthetics. But yes, we do see differences, and the biggest area is just the energy. And the other thing that really it's very not talked about is the brain fog. I mean, look, as you said, you're 60 years old. You're going strong. You're not slowing down. Well, why? What because back in the good old days, or the good old days, in the old days,
Nope.
you were done at 45. Out. You're working in the fields at 7 and you're dead at 50. I mean,
Yeah.
now at 50, you're like, well, I'm just getting going. Well,
Hmm.
what's going on? So we have a choice. We either go back to being cave people, or we accept we are now in this society, and science has to catch up with biology, or biology has to catch up with science, whichever way you want to look at it. So
Yeah.
that's what we want to do, and that's where we are. Yeah. So, any other questions you have? Any other questions?
I love it.
Any other?
Well, always there's questions. We can always do a follow up. So tell me what your biggest success stories are. I mean, we are coming up on
Right.
time. But why I would love to invite you to share. You had your 60-year-old who had a resumption of menses after just fixing the foundation. And I mean, I use the word just very loosely here, because really truly fixing and addressing the foundation is a big deal. And it's work that a lot of us don't necessarily want to take the time to do. But maybe if you're willing to share one or two other stories of just women who've really experienced amazing transformations or rejuvenations or restoration of their
Right.
vitality.
Um, okay. So we actually are in the process of asking some of our patients to do video vlogs, and they're willing to do it now because it's a very private thing. And
Sure.
I understand that, and we wanted to make sure. So success stories so far. We've had resumption of menstrual cycle and or hormonal balance improvements of approximately 85%, which is but
Wow.
again it's a very small sample size. We've got to be very careful here. So
Yeah.
but what we have got is we have started to break out across different ethnic and racial barriers, because there are differences, not as great as people think, but they are there. So it's not so much based on race, it's more like where you're located and things like that. But we've had one lady who had a child, but it was with a donor egg, but she carried the child to full term. But at the time we were saying, if you wait, you can see it, but her ovaries increased in size, and she also started to have menstrual cycles again afterwards. But again, her husband and her made this very clear decision that they didn't have time to do it. She wants to do it again, but it's about 60 now. And so and she's very fit and healthy. I mean, ridiculously fit and healthy. So that's something that we might look at. But what our best success stories are fundamentally resumption of menstrual cycle. We have improvement of hydration, improvement of hormonal balance. So it's not sort of you go into a tube and you come out and you look like you're 20 again, right? We
Yeah.
basically have fundamentally good success rates where we can replace the issues of having bioidentical hormone replacement with a one shot for 2.5, 3 years, and you're not feeling like you're a lab rat. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
basically what our success rates are. Now we have another round. So when we hopefully, if you'll be at A4M this year, hopefully we will see each other again. And by that time, we will have the results out from the ones that we did from last year, this year coming through. So once they come through, I can give you better answers for that. But
Follow up
yeah. Okay.
podcast
Follow up
coming up.
podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically what I'll do. I'm not going to overpromise and underdeliver. I'm doing it the other
No.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean this is fascinating. I do think, I want to reiterate for the audience something that you talked about earlier that we didn't talk about at length, but that is an important piece of the preparatory work that you do here, and that is in every one of your subjects to assess their cancer risk in and maybe you want to talk a little bit about how you look at that, because as you said, once you restart the engine, as it were. The body has, in that time frame, it has aged a little more. There's maybe a little bit more DNA damage at play. If there were predispositions for certain types of cancer going in to begin with, the question is, could they be flipped on when you resume, when you get those, you restart the hormonal machinery and all of these things. And so I think that's the
Right.
last little piece I would love to circle back towards, because I do think it's really important to understand that and for people to get clarity around it and to understand that this is part of your
Right.
process.
Yes. The answer is we do the basic tests, of course, which is CA19, CA125, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer. If you have those markers or predispositions, we won't do it.
Not a good idea.
I mean, we won't do it because, and that can be more people than you think. It depends, but we
Hmm.
also look at other areas. Like, so we do the full analysis, and with that analysis, if you come to us and you have a full, not a 23andMe, but a full, like we have a genetic scan for certain
Yeah, for
cancer
sure.
markers, and we look at that, and
Yeah.
if you have those markers, you have a predisposition towards cancer. So then that way we won't deal with we won't work with you in that way because we're not going to give you something that's going to be detrimental. We're just not going to do it. And
Yeah. Well, it's
yeah,
contrary to the
yeah,
objective of
exactly,
longevity.
exactly. And we can't. Not all people are eligible for what we do. We know that you can't do that. So we test for all the cancer markers, and basically the fertility cancer markers. So we take, as I
Hmm.
said, ovarian, uterine, cervical, all those ones. Generally speaking, most women have had these tests done at around about 40 generally, but you do have them. I don't know in Canada, but I know that in the US generally you should have had it done around about that time. It's called aroma karyotyping, stuff like that. But we do those tests anyway. So it's a precursor, and that's very important. And sometimes we have to say we can't help you. We just can't do that.
Yeah.
But there are other ways to mitigate that. There are always ways that we can't maybe use the stem cells, but we can find other ways that we could suggest someone else to speak to or something like that.
When you can still do all the other work, you can still create for this person a blueprint for their best
Yeah,
life, that where you can still do all that other work that you do, which ultimately will help someone to live a
yeah,
better life and might mitigate the
yeah,
risk of one of those propensities getting flipped
exactly.
on. We don't know
Okay.
for sure, but certainly you're moving the chips back into your favor
That's
there,
the plan.
right?
That's the plan. Exactly right. Yeah. Okay.
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 Well, Zach, this is a fascinating conversation, and it's not
Okay.
over by any stretch. I will be at
Okay.
A4M, so we will do a follow up episode. I don't know if we'll do it live or we'll do it in January when we get home, but regardless, I'm really interested to continue to follow your work
Absolutely.
because it is truly fascinating. Thank you so much for taking the
Okay.
time to be here
Okay.
today. Can we leave people with your coordinates? Like, how do they
Absolutely.
find out more about your work? How do they reach
Right.
you? That
The
kind of
best
thing.
way is to go to our website and fill out. We can read our website, which is austinbiotech.com, which without the H, Austin
Hmm.
Biotech. We leave the link at the end of it. We do
Yep.
have other social medias, but we don't really use them so much because we should be better at it. We're getting there, but we fundamentally have the website. You can go in and register interest. There's a button in the top right hand side. If you're on the mobile, it's a big button at the middle, and it will. You fill out the form and it has a few questions, and one of our team members will contact you. There's only 5 of us who will be initial contacts, right? They'll approach you. There's only 5 of us who will actually approach you with that conversation, and we can give you more information that way. And what we can do is we can give you, if you with that analysis, we can see if we can help you from there. And then there is a process that we go through. So there's an initial consultation, and then obviously that's a bit like a lawyer. The first consultation is free, kind of thing, and then after that we work it out. But we also give you a guideline of where to go and what to do, and that helps you. So the best way to contact us is to speak with us that way. Again, it's a labor intensive thing that we do. So if you're not willing to put the effort in with us, we're not willing to put the effort in with you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you can go online and you can see on the information there. And there's some other obviously podcasts and things that I've done, and we've had other people speaking about it too. But that's how you can get hold of us.
Amazing.
AustinBiotech.com. Okay.
Love it. All
Thank you.
right. Zack Varkaris, thank you
Thank you,
so much
Natalie.
for your time today and for sharing. And looking forward to seeing how things unfold in your work.
Thank you very
It's
much,
all very
Natalie. It's been a
fascinating.
pleasure. Bye bye.